I thought that simply expressing my opinion about every movie I have watched would be like farting in my own bubble. But since we are not from San Francisco and don't drive a Tesla, I decided to spice things up with some informative content to make the videos more engaging. So at the beginning I'll talk a bit about the actor's biography and interesting facts, if there are any, and then discuss the movies in which he has acted. Ryan Thomas Gosling was born in November 1980 in Canada. His father was a traveling salesman for a paper factory and his mother was a secretary. From a young age he enjoyed performing in public but was self-conscious about his voice and spent a long time trying to imitate Marlon Brando's accent. In his childhood, Gosling was a member of the Mickey Mouse Club where he performed alongside celebrities such as Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera and Justin Timberlake, with whom he even lived for a while. His mother even became his legal guardian after the Gosling mother returned to Canada for work. But perhaps the most interesting moment from his childhood was when he watched a Rambo, and after that he filled his school backpack with barbecue knives and threw them at his classmates during the break. As a result, he was rightfully suspended from school and spent a year being homeschooled by his mother. After the closure of the Mickey Mouse Club, Gosling continued to appear on television in various shows and series. For example, in 1997, he portrayed a young Oculus in a TV series about the Oculus, unexpectedly, isn't it? Which served as his entry into the world of mainstream cinema. However, during this time, he mostly worked in the independent films. He gained a significant fame after his role in the tearjerker romance film The Notebook, but we will talk about that later. In 2007, Gosling released a solo recording called Put Me in the Car, which can be listened on YouTube. It's not my style of music, you know, but definitely this thing is taking me back to the 2007. In the same year, Gosling and his friend Zach Shields formed an indie rock band called Dead Man's Bones. We didn't know how to play any instruments, so it took us a year to learn how to play, and then we recorded the album, he says. They released an album featuring a children's choir and went a tour across the United States in 2009. In each city they invited costumed children's choirs dressed as monsters and zombies, which resonated with Gosling's passion from an early age. For monsters, not to the children, I mean. Gosling owns a Moroccan cuisine restaurant called Tajine in Beverly Hills. In this restaurant, all the tableware has been replaced with toothpicks. For a while, Gosling dated Sandra Bullock, then Rachel McAdams, and currently he is in a relationship with Eva Mendes, with whom he has 2 daughters. He is also involved in public activism and has several tattoos, including one that he inked himself, and well, that's all. I want to go in 1 to 3 list order because I want to trace the transition from a young Oculus for boys to Oculus for girls. Frankenstein and Me. The first role in a feature film, and young Gosling already appears as an alpha male who managed to captivate the only girl in the entire desert with his very first appearance. In the film, after the death of their father, the children delve into the escapism. They stumble upon a creepy doll of the monster Frankenstein and jokingly pretend they can bring it back to life. In theory, they should have all been killed by lightning. Nothing too good for a cowboy. That's the case when a film about the cowboys is so damn... there is nothing to say about it. What could be worse and more boring than a cowboy romance, where 80% of the time people in hats are hopping back and forth, then over there, then back here. Gosling here, well, just a decoration. Oh, well, if you are enjoying The Cow's Grace, you will definitely enjoy this film. The movie is so boring that I can literally hear you clicking the mouse to close the video tab. Don't you dare! Remember the Titans. Black Jesus, played by Denzel Washington, became the first black coach in the absurd American football, because there is only one real football. However, the angry white folks calling to crucify of the black coach boycott the team's practices in order to keep the team from falling apart. The white and black coaches come together to overcome racial prejudice among all the things. By the year of 2000, this theme hadn't become the fucking mainstream. You know, it's one of those films where there are 2 groups of people who hate each other, then supposedly writers, but mean Denzel Washington shows up. He humiliates everyone for 15 minutes, makes them run in the middle of the night, tortures them, sticks their needles under their nails, twists their nipples until they moan. At some wonderful moment, they all suddenly become friends. Well, almost like real life, but not really. Gosling is not the main character here. He portrays a minor character, a little racist who just walks around and says shit. He stops being a racist as early as the 3rd scene with him, and his scenes last only 2 to 3 seconds. The Believer. The Believer. This is a Ryan Gosling first serious leading role in a major film. You know, it's interesting, he plays a failed cuckolded rabbi who becomes the leader of the neo-Nazi group. The film is magnificent, showcasing how Gosling tries to show the world that he is ready for the big screen's roles. It's not a problem for him to portray a character who holds two contradictory ideas in his mind, each of which has battling to other throughout his life, creating a raging whirlwind of anger and hatred directed seemingly towards a specific enemy, Jews, and in particular God himself. But at the same point he realizes that his main enemy is always with him, and things are not as straightforward as they may seem. I understand that with each passing year how we don't want to watch old movies, and it's natural for our tastes and the conscience of the world to change. However, despite the film initially appearing critical and resembling a story about the young Nazi who simply walk around and perform the Nazi salute concern all of us, there is something greater behind it and concerns all of us, not just the skinheads and the Jews. Of course, my opinion is not authority for anyone, but I charm you to at least occasionally watch the films that made before 2000. Murder by Numbers. A good film that delves into the theme of aspiring maniacs and those who never quit become them. But the film is not only about the maniacs. Through this example, creators question how free the person truly is and what absolutely freedom means. The Slaughter Rule. Well, here's his career growth. From a fool with no screen time in a film about American football to the lead role in a film about the American football. Football? The last thing I wanted to see in my life was a condom ripping off Wait, was it directed by Uwe Boll, by the way? A strange latent gay drama with a noir atmosphere, but to be fair, it must be noted that everyone in the film performs excellently. Considering it was shown only in 3 theaters and grossed only $13,411, it is evident that Gosling is willing to put a lot of effort to shed the stigma he earned as an actor in a children's shows, and his liveliness against the backdrop of a grim, cold, collective farm in a snowy countryside resonate with the audience, as does the film as a whole. I was joking about the gay drama, it's just not as straightforward as it seems. The United States of Leland. Once again, Gosling plunks into the abyss of the conscience of a killer. But this time, it's not just any killer, but an apathetic, dead inside emo who doesn't even know why he killed someone. The Notebook. At first it seems like some epic love story set against a backdrop of World War II similar to the Pearl Harbor, but in the end an older version of Gosling reads of the story of their yacht to his wife with dementia, hoping she will remember him. It sounds like something that would make you shed tears, and okay, sometimes you can watch a good melodrama, why not? But they missed the mark. The story goes like, he loves her, she loves him, but her parents take her away. A few years pass, she marries someone else, but then they meet again, have sex, and it ends. They die in the same day. Not quite La La Land yet, but Gosling has already established himself as a hero of such films, and that's probably partly a bad thing. Let me jump ahead and express my unnecessary opinion anyway. It seems to me that greedy directors and producers saw his charming face and decided to exploit it fully, making the actor contort that mournful expression of the considerate dog with the huge eyes and that smirk to make girls swoon. Of course, that's not a bad thing, but still, the portrayal of a hysterical ultra-righteous Jewish teenager would have been much more interesting, in my opinion, and it could have proven that all skeptics that Gosling is a versatility actor. This was his first commercially successful film that put him on the map of the big wings in the industry. Stay. Ewan McGregor and Gosling in the lead roles. We can close all the cinema. Goodbye heterosexuality. He has so many scenes shot from a Dutch angle that by the middle you will start feeling motion sickness, and by the end your perception of the world will have shifted by 45 degrees. Previously, if Gosling characters explored their own madness and tried to understand themselves, in this film the audience is being pushed through a thin, banal veil of a plot about a psychiatrist and the patient into a vicious, dark swamp of insane. asynchronous conscious in the attempt to grasp it. Even the viewer mind begins to whistle. Mad transitions, insane camera angles, bizarre scenes, crazy dialogue, eccentric characters, everything here is so strange, as if you were watching someone else's dream. The film earned 8 million and it was coolly received by the critics, who apparently expected Gosling and McGregor to deliver another sentimental drama rather than a psychedelic thriller that raised questions like, what if we are merely a product of someone else's imagination? Why do we have considered something to be real and something else is not? What awaits us after the death? Awakening? Or a looping nightmare or fragment of memories? It is strange that the earlier film, which raised similar question to Stay, was acclaimed without reservations, while this film passed by a large audience. But if someone were to ask me for a recommendation for a Gosling film, I would probably suggest The Believer first, and then Stay, and then the third one is the film called Half Nelson. Why these three films specifically? Because they're independent and they don't confine Gosling acting to the role of a bloodthirsty autistic or a hero of the girl's wet fantasies. Gosling plays a teacher in a challenging neighborhood school, teaching children not only academic subjects but also a life lesson, trying to instill in them the idea that worthwhile things require a great effort. It seems like a noble message, but he himself is heavily depends on the substance. He received an Oscar nomination for the Best Actor, though it was just a nomination. However, it was a time when the theme of tolerance in films wasn't so forced and insincere, and acting abilities were still recognized to some extent. So one could say that nomination for an Oscar back then holds more value than the Oscar does right now. The film grossed only $4.5 million, but considering its budget of $700,000, so it's okay. Fracture. Gosling character as the lawyer got involved with a Rosamund Pike, but if I were in his place, I would be more cautious because it could end badly. Anthony Hopkins is once again playing the villain, but the main value of the film lies in the chemistry between him and Gosling. It reminds me of the verbal sparring between Clarice Starling and Hannibal Lecter, but not quite the same if you know what I mean. Lars and the Real Girl. A film that can make you both cry and laugh at the same time, about a lonely, non-tactical, good-natured goofball who, due to a certain mental disorder, cannot interact with the women. An example of a good film about the tolerant. It was only towards the end to the film I realized he was communicating with a doll. This speaks of a convincing performance of the actors and the enjoyable reactions of the characters to what is happening. Blue Valentine. A love drama unfolds from 2 points in time, the beginning of the characters' relationship and its decline. There is nothing particularly remarkable about the plot, as it's a common story of love without a happy ending. However, for the most part, the film captivated me and many others with the acting performance of these two main characters, especially the portrayal of the both of youthful and aged versions of Gosling. The film was convincingly acted, as the screenplay was written specifically for Ryan Gosling and Michelle Williams. At the same time, Ryan was going through a breakup with Rachel McAdams, while Michelle was still recovering from the death of her husband, Heath Ledger. Perhaps if you are young and believe in love until the end, this film may resonate with you the more something like The Notebook, where love is portrayed more like a fairy tale. All Good Things. It is based on real event that is in reality no one really cares about, not even actors themselves, as it seems like Gosling is simply too lazy to play this part. Drive. He didn't die at the end of the drive, you know. He went to the Bangkok and opened an underground boxing club, just like Bryan Cranston, who later went on to work on a chemistry teacher. You know, there is a stage of conscience in his life. At this very moment, as I'm writing this text, the song Night Call by Kavinsky came up on the shuffle. It's an iconic song from the drive which I can hardly embellish further with my short review. It is interesting to think if the film would have gained such a cult status if Hugh Jackman had been cast instead of Gosling, as initially planned, and if it had been directed by Neil Marshall, a Razzie Award nominee known for directing only TV series. Another interesting fact that one of the most memorable scenes in the film is the one in the elevator was edited down because the producer deemed it too brutal. The Ides of March. Everyone is trying so hard their roles to portray a drama supposedly resolving around an election race, but there is no tension, no detective element, no mind games, absolutely nothing. I don't even know who this film could have appealed to. Everyone lies, everyone is disciple, everyone is ready to step on the other heads. Is that the truth? Thanks, but I only need 5 minutes sitting in front of the TV or browsing the internet to understand that. Despite of the Golden Globe nomination for the Best Actor, Gosling himself says he didn't fully grasp who he was supposed to play, as an American idealism is not particularly familiar to him. And overall, George Clooney as a director is greatly overrated. He didn't say the last part, but you got the idea, you know? Crazy, stupid love. Oh, wait, what? It's a La La Land, but not a musical. It is easy to identify a certain pattern in Gosling films. Initially, filmmakers were open to experiments in the wave of hype surrounding movies about the maniacs and mental illness, exploring of the human soul and mind. But then, the normies seeped into the cinema, and Gosling's talent was overwashed by the concert slaps of his expressionless face against the mourning woman and man in excitement. There is an opinion that the film revelated the comedic side of the actor's world. Also, in my opinion, he's just a classic ladies man whose comedy abilities would still look so pale in comparison to the Steve Carell. Only God forgives. Once again, the great and genius Nicholas Refn forces Gosling to play a wooden autistic plank, a role that was originally intended for the River Aragorn. This means we can expect an incredibly slow narrative and maximally apathetic face with an emotional spectrum of a cement bag. There are scenes of excessive violence. Seriously, with all due respect, he looks like someone who has pool cure stuck up his ass. Take it off! What the fuck are you yelling about? Peter Travis from Rolling Stones commented that Gosling meant to be a blank page upon which we can write, often just looks empty. Nothing could be truer. Even an actor himself spoke negatively about the film considering it's a plot incoherent. The plot is banal and boring. Gosling's brother is killed because he was a sadist who loved kids, if you know what I mean, and Gosling cannot kill his brother's killer. Instead, his criminal mother from America, a crime boss, does it for him. The film is visually appealing, to be honest, with its colors, cameras, angels, violent scenes, and all the things we love Refn for. But it's not still enough. It could be as an interesting plot, but instead we get unnecessarily prolonged scenes even in the editing process. It didn't become drive, and maybe that's for the best. The Place Beyond the Pines. I've been wanting to watch this film for a while. I thought it was about a cool guy from the neighborhood robbing banks and riding mountain bike, but it turns out an incredibly badass cast of actors, and it turns out the film is more about Bradley Cooper than Ryan Gosling. Unfortunately, there are very few films that can unexpectedly and interestingly change the direction of the narratives like this. Despite his role, Gosling himself said it was the best experience he ever had in making film. Also, such an enthusiastic reaction was probably due to the fact that in the years leading up to this film, he played nothing but a character's goofballs. Here, he played the same driver from The Drive, only this time his character is not cold-blooded machine like the Anton Chigurh. Am I the only one who thinks these characters are very similar? But more alive with a soul, so to speak. An excellent film in terms of atmosphere, personality reminding me of Three Billboards. Gangsta Squad. Also, I would call this film Normie Squad. You know... The genre is a collection of cliches influenced by the setting. Some people understand this and make films, for example, about the crime while orienting themselves around the certain cliches, creatively modifying and experimenting with the form. For example, a good cop and a bad cop like a Bradley Cooper but in one person. However, some people simply take tired out archetypes like a tough cop and his mean, fat boss who's nagging him for being cool and righteous. Such things were okay in the 80s and 90s films. Also, even then, they were mocked. But this garbage from 2013. I'm starting to feel really angry by these polished wannabe stylish films with such boring and monotonous dialogues, smirks and cliché phrases, laugh crap and all that. The only thing that helps endure these films to the end is another pairing of Gosling and Stone, which is mixed by a wooden character. In an interview, Stone mentions that she hopes for new roles alongside Gosling, and it's understandable. It is so awkward moment when the film scripts and direction don't even come close to the charisma of the actors, who unfortunately don't save the film but make it even more awkward. Well, what more can you expect from someone who got involved in producing Venom 2, although he did direct Zombieland, which was great. The Big Short. The film is about the mortgage and, as a result, the economic crisis in 2007, centered about the complex banking and stock market terms that I don't understand at all. However, the director took care to make it easier for the audience to grasp what is happening through a simple means. Mr. Freeman, you are fired. From now on, Margot Robbie in a bubble bath will answer all the questions of the universe. The soundtrack and cast completely captivated me. Well, how is that thrilling action film about the gangsters falls short in comparison with a film about stockbrokers? Ryan Gosling's role here is not particularly big, and he somewhat reminds me of Matthew McConaughey from The Wolf of Wall Street. It is a good film for one-time viewing. Steve Carell is a magnificent actor, by the way. Song to song. You know, it is a fucking really boring 2 hours of soul suffering with dialogues like quotes from the magazines for Karens, and the whole movie is about it. Fassbender is sniffing Portman's asshole. Okay, understandable. Have a nice day. But where is the Blade Runner? What the fuck is going on there? It is understandable that the director wanted to emphasize the emotional experience of everything that's happening, but it seems like they went overboard with the metaphors. I may be a foolish person who doesn't grasp all the metaphors, allegories, and other tropes, but when I hear monotonous expression, it starts to feel like someone is trying to deceive me in order to accuse me of not understanding the depth of this masterpiece. It's like, come on, you just don't understand love. It's just love, 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 love. Why don't you get it?
They play with sex. They make it cheap. Maybe you need this world. Maybe what steers your blood is...
You shut up! Shut up!
La La Land. I can't speak for everyone, but personally, musicals make me shrink in discomfort. I would even say I'm afraid of them. You are sitting there minding your business and suddenly, why the hell are you all so happy? Gosling was really determined to fulfill the director's dream of making this film. To convince him to portray a jazz musician, he took jazz piano lessons every day for 4 months, memorizing the themes composed by the musician. With a budget of $30 million, the film grossed $440 million, which is not surprising considering the star-studded cast that has proven their worth as duo. I don't feel inclined to say anything bad about this film, but also I can't really pinpoint anything good about it neither. Because the theme of lovers who are not meant to be together has become quite tiresome. It is the third film with Gosling where the plot involves a girl whose parents are worried about that guy is a broke loser with no money and he overhears it or something. Trust me, you've seen La La Land in other films before. The Nice Guys. The only film where Gosling fully showcased his comedic acting skills and fit perfectly into the role of a lone private detective father. The film followed the style of a classic detective movies like Lethal Weapon or Rush Hour. I really feel bad that despite of a budget of $50 million, it only grossed $63 million and burying any chances for a sequel. It is a fantastic comedy that I rewatched once a year. In one of the interviews, the director mentioned the difficulty competing with blockbuster comics movies that dominate the whole industry. And it's true. To make a film even a little bit successful, you need a powerhouse cat. Cat? What the fuck I'm talking about? To make a film even a little bit successful, you need a powerhouse cast, top-notch writers, directors, and a ton of money poured into the advertising. This has always been the case, but it's understandable why the film industry is stagnating and the motivation for filmmakers is going down. Fortunately, the world is finally starting to outgrow this era of comic cinema boom. If Marvel will continue to make the same garbage like Doctor Strange or Spider-Man, perhaps a new renaissance awaits us in the movie industry. Blade Runner 2049 is a wonderful example of how we should approach a classic cinema. Thank goodness that Ridley Scott, the director of the first film, had no involvement with this one, as we all know what he does with a sequel to cult classics. This film can be dissected into the smallest components, from metaphors and references to the framing of temperature of the lightning, and each of these details can be analyzed for hours on the end. The role of the sentient robot experiencing the existential crisis is undoubtedly his own, as the scene at the center memory creation, despite its meme nature, evokes a strong sense of empathy. Overall, it feels like Gosling is an excellent actor trapped in the body of a playboy, which causes many to perceive him as prejudiced. However, the romantic storyline between the android and the hologram leaves no one indifferent. I want to remind you that everything I'm saying is my subjective opinion, and perhaps you have a different opinion which I would gladly read in the comments, but this is my perspective. Perhaps I'm based too Or perhaps I'm a hidden gay, or maybe I deeply regret that they didn't cast a chubby Gosling for the role of Mark Wahlberg in the film Lovely Bones. And maybe I would kill someone for that quote. Where the hell can I get it? Please tell me. First Man, the film about the first man on the moon. It would have been funny if at the end Gosling in the role of Armstrong, the astronaut, saw Kubrick with the camera in his hands. But overall, it's a mix of drama and patriotism with the interesting part of focusing on the preparation for the flight. It is just so unclear what the Oscar was awarded for. Supposedly for the best visual effects. It looks nice, yeah, but it's not really anything groundbreaking. It is a solid average film. However, what's missing is that historical spirit where everyone is screaming, peeing themselves and freaking out of the tension, shouting something like, "We're the best country in the world and all the countries envy us, America is the best." The Gray Man. It's kinda like John Wick with a Marvel actors cast. The Spider-Man and the Falcon were the cameramans. This guy died between the scenes and the Captain America as his favorite musician Rami Malek betrayed the Christ and the Shield, after which, with a cry of "Heil Hydra!" become the world terrorist. It is so sad that dialogues were written by this dude. I have only one question. Why? Why the main villain wasn't killed while he was knocked out? Well, he's actually laying down just in 1 meter. Just shoot him, goddammit! Anyway, I'm feeling good myself today and I just will ignore that thing and approximately 80,000 stupid moments in the film, just because of one scene where Ana de Armas with the RPG and an overweight grenade launcher runs to beat Captain America in the face. Well guys, do not forget to subscribe the channel and like this video. I don't have much time to say goodbye because the radical Albanians that kidnapped me ordered to make video about all the greatest Hollywood actors, and they're going to use all this data for creating the synthetical greatest Albanian actor.